No longer will small business owners have to worry about a massive tax hike at the end of the year. It is done, made permanent. Small business owners can plan. It was a huge, huge victory, something a lot of small business owners have been talking about.
The Small Business Rundown is the official podcast of the National Federation of Independent Business, the member-driven voice of small business. NFIB and our members advocate to keep America's small businesses strong and independent in Washington, D.C., all 50 states, and the nation's courts.
Welcome to the Small Business Rundown, a biweekly podcast with information on independent businesses' victories and challenges in Washington, D.C. and state capitals. I'm Adam Temple, NFIB Senior Vice President of Advocacy. Today, we have a big update on the 20% small business tax deduction. After the historic signing of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, we have joining us our NFIB President Brad Close and NFIB Vice President of Federal Government Relations, Jeff Brabant. Brad, Jeff, thanks for joining us today on the Small Business Rundown.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me, Adam.
Brad, the 20% small business tax deduction, it's been a number one priority of NFIB's for several years now. A lot of big news in the last couple of weeks and months. Can you just tell us what the current state of affairs is?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been something we've focused on as our top federal priority for the last 2 years, and I'm pleased to say that the small business deduction was made permanent, so no longer will small business owners have to worry about a massive tax hike at the end of the year. The Big Beautiful Bill Act included legislation making the 20% small business deduction permanent. So it's not going to be year to year. It is done, made permanent. Small business owners can plan. It was a huge, huge victory, something a lot of small business owners have been talking about. They realize what it's meant to their business, to job creation, to being able to buy new equipment, pay down debt. So that was great. And there were also some other significant tax victories in there as well that are going to help small businesses going forward.
Right. And Jeff, Brad mentioned some of the other tax victories. Obviously, the biggest one for NFIB was the small business deduction. But can you tell us a little bit more about the other issues that were contained in the bill that our listeners might care about?
Absolutely. There's a number of other big wins for small businesses in that bill. And while the pass-through sector did great with the 20% small business deduction, it also got a win with marginal rates aren't going to increase. So if you're that sole proprietor, if you're that partnership, if you're that S corporation, you're one of the 8 and 10 small employers and 9 and 10 small businesses that are pass-through businesses, you also avoided 5 out of your 7 marginal rates from going up. So that was a big win along with the small business deduction being made permanent. If you are the other 20% of small employers in your C corporation, your taxes didn't go up either. So it was a positive thing for all small businesses, either pass-through or C corporation. A couple other issues, Section 179 expensing, which has been a pretty big issue for small business in general. We sometimes just call it small business expensing. That cap was increased from $1.25 million to $2.5 million. So if you buy a new piece of equipment, you can write that off in year one. That's really going to encourage small businesses to invest more in their companies and potentially expand operations. And lastly, the estate tax exemption was slightly increased, indexed for inflation and made permanent. So that's going to be $15 million for individual filers and $30 million for joint filers. And that's important to a lot of family businesses so that family businesses can stay in the family. And a lot of times we've seen that the family has to sell the family business, and generally to a larger competitor too, which is not great for local communities.
Right. And Brad, altogether, what does the inclusion of these policies mean for small businesses across the country?
Well, I think, bottom line, it allows them to keep more of their hard-earned money in the business. And I think in Washington, we're constantly reminding policymakers when they're talking about tax policy, they're talking about other people's money. And, we've always made the point, and small business owners do, that they know what's best for their business and they know how to run it. So allowing them to keep more of their money, that's a huge victory for small businesses. And if you're a small business owner and you don't know if you've benefited from the small business deduction, you can always check your line 13 on your tax return. That'll tell you how much more of your own money you're allowed to keep each year under this provision that's now been made permanent. So when we talk to small business owners, they've used this provision to increase wages, pay benefits, buy new equipment, pay down debt, grow their business. It's been used for all different kinds of things, but bottom line, it's been a huge, huge positive for the small business economy.
Yeah. Now we'll take a short break.
NFIB is your national leader in protecting, advocating, and fighting for the interests of small businesses. From providing resources to making your voice heard, becoming an NFIB member has benefits to support your business. Join us today online at nfib.com/join us.
Welcome back to the Small Business Rundown. Jeff, it was definitely a sprint to the July 4th deadline. Can you give us a little bit of insight into what it would look like behind the scenes as we were trying to get this bill across the finish line?
I think calling it a sprint is apt, Adam. It was it was an exciting time. It was something that was a culmination of 2 years. And once we got out there, the House went first. The House passed a bill. When the House draft came out, we were thrilled. It was a great, great bill for small business, made the deduction permanent, no tax increase on small business. We made sure we put a key vote alert out in the House. If you're not sure what a key vote alert is, that means we put something out where a member of Congress is scored on their vote. And later in the Congress, at the end of the Congress, we're going to give a percentage or a grade to each member of Congress. So if you're an NFIB member, you can go on our website and see how your member of Congress scored on their scorecard. And a key vote rises to a very high level. So when we do a key vote, members of Congress know this is a huge deal for NFIB. So not only do we do that key vote, of course, there was your regular lobbying. There was grassroots. We had over 10,000 emails and messages sent to members of Congress from our members, from NFIB members, from you all listening today to members of Congress. So that was a huge deal. Otherwise, once that got through the House and got to the Senate, that's when the real sausage making began, and you had to settle the differences between the two chambers, and those things get complicated. What we try to do at that point is, as lobbyists, is make sure everyone knows exactly how you feel about everything. At the end of the day, they're the decision makers, and they can choose to do something that's bad for you or good for you. Yeah. But you never want there to be any ambiguity on how you feel. For example, we had been hearing from members of Congress when we had talked about the most important thing is the 20% small business deduction, making it permanent. After a while, they would say, we know, take it easy.
Right.
So I think that was the most important thing, is reiterating that over and over and over, so that there was never going to be any question of what was our top priority. But just because we've done that for 2 years didn't mean we could stop once it got close. We had to reiterate to committee chairmen, to their staff, to senators, to members of Congress that was the top thing. And then when it got down to the very, very, very end, made sure our key vote alerts were out, made sure everyone was aware of what was happening. And I think at that point the president was doing more arm twisting than NFIB was, but it really got over the top.
Well, speaking of arm twisting, one of the things you mentioned was telling the story and action alerts and key votes and people going to look at the key votes and how their member of Congress scored. Behind all that are members, the ones really doing the arm twisting, or at least explaining why this is important. Brad, we have done several events where we brought members into D.C., whether it's the fly-in, we did small business summits where we brought members in just on this issue specifically. Can you just talk a little bit about the importance of those events and the members behind them?
Yeah, absolutely. It's impossible to overstate the importance of having actual small business owners come to D.C. to meet with their legislators, to lobby them personally. And I think the fly-ins and the tax summits gave a lot of small business owners and some first-time activists the ability to do that. And I think a lot of them who came for the first time realized this provision is very important to my business. I know what it's meant. And if I don't get involved, I don't know if this is going to happen. So I think that mindset of folks being willing to get involved, come to D.C. and tell their story was huge. And between NFIB members coming up, small business owners, and then NFIB itself constantly educating Congress, I think Congress finally realized that this small business tax provision, the small business tax deduction, is really a pro-economic growth provision and a pro-jobs provision. So they realized what it meant to the small business economy and what it meant to employees who work in that economy. So that was huge. But it really came down to small business owners making this happen and with a sustained long-term effort.
So obviously a huge win for small businesses, making the 20% small business tax deduction permanent. But where do we go from here after a victory like this?
We need to keep working, and we can't rest on our laurels, and we need to keep fighting to make sure that it remains a significant victory for small business owners.
Yeah, you can never take for granted that Congress is going to do the right thing. So this was made permanent, which makes it very hard to change or to make it smaller in the future. But you can never underestimate Congress's ability to foul things up, especially when it comes to economic policy. So we need to keep the pressure on them and remind them what this provision means to the economy, means to small business owners, so that they never want to touch this provision again.
Absolutely. Jeff, before we go, anything else you'd like to add?
I just want to remind people the stakes going into the debate for the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. If this didn't get passed, as a reminder, 33 million small businesses were looking at a significant tax hike. If this didn't get passed, the 20% small business tax deduction that 25.9 million small businesses claimed in 2021 would have gone away. If this didn't get passed, 5 out of 7 marginal rate bands, which affects almost every pass-through business, which is 9 in 10 small businesses, would have increased. So while there were many, many, many things in that bill, just remember, if this didn't happen, we were looking at massive tax hikes for small businesses.
Brad, any parting thoughts?
Just really a huge thank you to all the small business owners who got involved, whether they're just, active back in their states, came to D.C., lobbied their members of Congress personally, wrote letters, sent emails, made phone calls. All those things made a huge difference, and we couldn't have done it without you. And I think just to thank you to the folks in Congress who made this happen. There were some real strong small business champions up there who really pushed this from the beginning and really helped us get over the finish line. So between Congress and the White House, there's a lot of people there to say thank you to.
So as Brad mentioned as we wrap up, we do appreciate the leadership of lawmakers on this issue. And if you're a small business owner, I ask that you just consider telling Congress what it means to have this 20% deduction made permanent instead of expiring later this year. There's a link in this episode's show notes to take action and quickly send your lawmakers an email about what it means for your small business. The show notes also include more information on the small business deduction and the signing of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Looking ahead, if there's anything you'd like us to cover on a future episode of the podcast, please email us at podcast@nfib.org. And now I want to thank you, the listeners, for joining us on today's Small Business Rundown. We'll be back every 2 weeks bringing you news and analysis from Washington, D.C. and state capitals so that you, whether you're a business owner or a supporter of one, can continue to blaze a trail.
The Small Business Rundown is brought to you by NFIB, the voice of small business. You can find us at nfib.com and on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn.